All right, guys, are there any questions over the assignment yesterday? Over yesterday's assignment? Okay. So what we're doing today is more of the same type thing, more factoring. Just the main difference is that the a value, the number in front of x squared, is not going to be 1. We're going to have different numbers in front of it. Now, for the most part, we're not going to have too many complicated values of a where we have 6, 7 different sets of factors that a could be. But we'll be looking at these here. And again, just with like yesterday, the first main step in factoring is determining whether or not we have a greatest common factor. Because if we do have a greatest common factor, we'll need to pull it out. But looking at this here, x squared, 31x, and 20, well, there's not a greatest common factor between these three numbers. So we can move on to our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Then the next thing we'll look at is the signs. We need to find the sign that will go into each set of parentheses. And for that there, we look at the third term. Since the third term here is negative, the signs are going to be opposite. One is going to be positive and one is going to be negative. From there, we're going to find the factors of the first and third term. So the first term is 7x squared. Well, the factors of x squared are just x and x, because there's only one set of factors for x squared. And all the factors of 7 are 1 and 7. So we can say 1 and 7. Because there's only one set, we can just plug it in. Really doesn't matter where we plug it in, we just have to put them in a spot. Now the factors of 20 on the other hand, well, we do have a few. We do have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. Which set of factors do we want to try first? 2 and 10. And the last thing we need to do is to check to make sure we do have it set up correctly. So if we do x times negative 10, we get negative 10x. 2 times 7x is plus 14x. Negative 10x plus 14x is 4x. Is that the middle term that we want? Because if we swap the signs, I would take it from positive 4x as the middle term to negative 4x. So let's switch the 10 and 2 and see if that helps. Let's just try switching it first and see. Yeah, because this probably is not going to help, because x times negative 2 is negative 2x. 7x times 10 is plus x, which gives us 68x. Okay. So 10 and 2 did not work in either setup. So it's not going to be a set. What can we try next? Let's go with 4 and 5. 1 and 20 might be a little big. 4 and 5. And if we check this here, x times negative 5 is negative 5x. 4 times 7x is plus x, which gives us 23x. Yep, let's swap them again. Give it one more try, because those are a little bit closer than the previous ones. Plug it back in with 5 and 4, and I think this actually's got it, because x times negative 4 is negative 4x. 5 times 7x is plus 35x. Negative 4x plus 35x is 31x. Whenever we get the correct number but wrong sign, we just need to flip the signs. If we flip the signs, we'll get the correct answer because it'll change it from positive 31x to negative 31x. Because here now we would have 4x minus 35x, which would give us negative 31x, which is the correct middle term. Any other questions on this here? All right, let's look at the next one here. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? Well, no. So we could start off with our, see if it'll let me write. Okay. Thank you. Two sets of parentheses. Lord. What is now it'll write. Let's see here. Maybe I just don't have to look at it. Really? There we go. Two sets of parentheses with three spaces. I don't know. Now we need to find the sign. Since the constant term is positive, the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term, which is positive. So we have positive and positive. 2b squared. Well, the factors of b squared are going to be b and b. And the factors of 2 are 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. Either way, either setup is fine. Now we need to find the factors of 21. Now the factors of 21 are 1 and 3 and 7. Which one do we want to try first? And the last thing we need to do is to check this here. 2b times 7 is 14b. And 3 times b is, and 14b plus 3b is 17b, which is the correct middle term that we wanted. So this here is the correct answer. Any questions on any of this so far? I do want to look at this one here. Because when we look at this one here, is there a greatest common factor between all three terms? Because 7 does work with 7 and 28. Does 7 divide into 45 evenly? Because 7 times 7 is 49, and 7 times 6 is 42. It's right there in the middle. It's very tempting to want to say that it is divisible by 7 across all three. But unfortunately, it is not. So there is not a greatest common factor, so we'll go on to our two sets of parentheses with three spaces. Now, since the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. One's going to be positive, the other is going to be negative. Now the factors of 7x squared, x and x, and 7 and 1. Two and so these here are the only factors of 28. Which one do we want to try first? Now 7x times 14 is going to be negative 98x. Plus 2x is going to be negative 96x. So we might need to change that there. So instead of, well, we can do 14 and 2, but this won't quite work because, well, 7 and 14, do they have a greatest common factor? Yeah. If there's not a greatest common factor to begin with, well, we can't have one here. And if we did try this to see if this worked, well, 7x times negative 2, yep, 14x would give us 0x. Okay. So since we tried all the combinations with 2 and 14, well, that won't work. So which one can we try instead? 4 and 7. And we could try this here. Well, 7 times negative 7 is negative 49x. 4 times x is going to be plus 4x, which gives us negative. Is that what we wanted? So this right here is the correct answer. Any other questions on this here? Do we feel pretty comfortable with this here so far? Any questions on this one here? No? Because if y'all want to, we can do this here. If not, we can go on and skip it. It's up to y'all. Huh? Okay. Let's look at this one here next. Looking at this problem here, is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? 4. Because 8 does work with 16 and 80, but it unfortunately doesn't work with 28. 4 does work with all three. Now there is one other greatest common factor between these three terms. Because 4 is across all three for the numbers, but there is something else in common in all three. And it's not a number. They all have an n. They all specifically have n squared. Each one of them has 2 factors of n. Because we can actually factor out variables as well. Since all of them have at least 2 n's, because n to the 4th has 4, n cubed has 3, and n squared has 2. They all have at least 2. We can pull that out as well. So again, when we factor out a greatest common factor, we're dividing each one of the terms by that number. So when we divide 28 by 4, we get 7. N to the 4th divided by n squared. Well, we have 4 and we take 2 away. We're left with n squared. Plus 16n cubed divided by 4n squared. 16 divided by 4 would be minus 80 divided by 4 would be 20. And n squared divided by n squared would simplify out to 1, which would just really tell us that we have 20 times 1, which is just 20. So we can factor out numbers and variables. Now, since there's not any other greatest common factor, well, or n squared, we can rewrite this as 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now, since the third term, the 20 is negative, our signs would be opposite. So 1 is going to be positive and 1 is going to be negative. And lastly, we need to find our factors. So factors for 7n squared, well, n squared is going to be n and n. And the factors of 7, well, 7 and 1. We only have one set of factors for that there, so we really don't need to list them out. Now, the factors of 20, on the other hand, do have a few, because we do have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Which one do we want to try first? 4 and 5. And we can check this here. Now, 7n times negative 5 is going to be negative 35n. 4 times n is going to be plus 4n, which would give us negative 31n. Now, if we flip the signs, it would change it from negative 31n to positive 31n, which is not our middle term. So what we can do is we can switch the 4 and 5 and see if that gets us closer to or gets us the correct middle term. 7n, negative 28n, plus 5n is negative 23n. Okay. So we can say that 4 and 5 didn't work. Try which one? 10 and 2. Which one do we want to put? Okay. Yes. So 10 and 2 does work because 7n times negative 2 would be negative 14n. And 10 times n would be 10n, giving us negative 4n. And exactly, we got the correct number but wrong sign. So what we can do is we can flip the signs. And this would give us the correct setup because now we would have positive 14n minus 10n, giving us a positive 4n. So that there would be the correct answer. And we do need the greatest common factor included in our answer. Any other questions on any of this here? All right. Let's look at this one here. I think the other classes asked for this one here, and we'll finish up on this problem here. 30n squared times b, 30n squared b, minus 87nb plus 30b. So again, we need to find a greatest common factor to see if there is one between these three terms. 3, yes, goes into all three. 3b will go into all three of these here. Yeah. Yeah, we skipped one. So we can go on and divide this out. 30 divided by 3 would be 10 n squared minus 87 divided by 3 would be 29 n, and the b would factor out completely, plus 30 divided by 3 is 10, and we factor out the b completely. Now 3b is the only greatest common factor, so we can set it up with 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now, since the third term is positive, the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term. Well, the sign of the middle term is negative, so our signs in both parentheses would be negative and negative. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third term. Now the factors of n squared would be n and n. Now the factors of 10 are 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. Which one do we want to try first? 1 and 10 or 2 and 5? Yes. So what number would go here? And two n times negative 2 would be negative n. Negative 5 times 5n is negative, which would give us negative 29n, which is the middle term that we wanted, so this here is the correct set of factors. Any other questions on any of this here?